But we have to understand, I mean, if I were to categorize the businesses, though every business is set up to earn profits primarily, except for the social businesses or those organizations that are for social causes or public sector entities. So every business that is in the private sector, the primary objective is earning profits. Um, in terms of family-owned businesses, there are businesses that are actually owned by the families. That is one category of business. And there are family-owned businesses that, in addition to being owned by the family, are also actually actively managed by the family or family members, or the important positions in the management or at the board level are actually held by the family members. So this category or the second category of business actually we will be discussing more in our today's webinar. Um, Going further forward, taking it further forward, so is it good or is it bad? So, I mean, we are not actually debating, or we would not be debating whether the family owned businesses are good or bad. Rather, we would be debating on what exactly are the challenges in terms of family owned businesses and what role the professionals or the governance or the family constitution can actually play in streamlining these peculiar governance issues that actually relate to the family owned businesses. One thing that is very important to understand whenever we talk of family owned businesses is that it's not only the business that we are talking of. There are two things that are interrelated. There is family and there is business. There is business and there is family. If something goes wrong in the family, it has an auto impact in the business. If something good or bad happens in the business, it has an auto impact or a reflective impact on the family. So, both of them go hand in hand. And I think this we have to remember and keep reminding ourselves for the next 80, 90 minutes that, whenever we talk of family owned businesses that are managed by the family members, so it's not only the business that we are talking of, it's actually the family and business both together. So what exactly are the differentiating characteristics of family-owned businesses? There could be conflicts, there could be challenges, and similarly at the same time there could be opportunities as well. So let's take a couple of examples. There could be a scenario where senior a senior member of the family who is very good when it comes to streamlining family issues, settling disputes within the family, etc., etc. But that doesn't mean if he is senior age-wise in the family and is good at settling family issues, it doesn't mean at all that he would also be, or he can also be at same level or a very good business leader as well. And if by virtue of being a senior member or a senior member of the family, he wants to take the position or command the position of a senior leader of the business and is not capable of doing it, then we have got a conflict situation. Okay. And it really, it really then boils down to the family members and the constitution and the elders of the family, how they actually handle that kind of situation, if there is one. So it could be a conflict situation, or it could be an opportunity situation, depending how you actually handle it. And remember, we have to keep remember this all the time, that it's not only the family that we are talking of, or it's not only the business that we are talking of. Because if a family member or few of the family members are disgruntled in the family, so obviously when they come to the office, when they come to the business, obviously they would be coming with the same sort of grudges when they sit on the desk and when they interact within the business. So obviously it has to be settled amicably. Another conflict situation could be, or another challenging situation could be, that a senior leader of the business wants to induct his children in the family business. Fine, there's no issue in it. I mean, he can, always bring his children in the business. But the issue is he wants to bring them at a position which they are not capable of taking off. let's say, for example, he wants to be inducted his children directly at the position of senior manager. But ideally, other members of the family feel, or the constitution explains is this way, that all the starters or new joiners should start from the position of assistant manager, let's say, for example. So here we have got a challenging situation, and it really depends how we handle that challenging situation, whether we want to take it to the side of conflict, or whether we want to take it to the side of opportunity. And all these challenges actually grow, and they multiply as the business grows, the family expands, new generation starts joining the business, older generation start leaving the business, and these all these situations then sort of then start multiplying with the passage of time, and they come to the extreme level when the so-called business, the sibling business, sibling consortium business gets transferred to a cousin's consortium. So obviously, then there's a lot of divide within the family. People from different mindset, people from different upbringing, they sit together on the meeting table when they're talking business. So then these situation, if not handled properly, they can create a conflict sort of situation. So what exactly are the governance issues? Let me take some help from a slide that I've prepared. Let me go to the slide. So how governance is actually different? Too much reliance on family members, owners. Obviously, I would rely more on my son or daughter rather than the manager. Lack of segregation of duties. Obviously, again, the reliance would be more on the family members in terms of giving them responsibilities, asking them what they've done as compared to any other manager within the business. Difficult relations between the family members, as I explained earlier as well. I mean, if there is an issue within the family, so there would be a reflection of the same at the business as well. Business strategy is aligned to family aspirations. This is also very important because business normally has a vision. The vision is long term. There could be family members who have got different aspirations. Their aspirations would be short term or medium term. So there would be a mismatch in terms of matching the aspirations between the family members and the business. Board mostly comprises of family members. Key positions are held by family members who may not be good professionals. I mean, this is this may be a gray area. This may be a conflicting statement, but this may be true. This may be false. This may be correct. This may be incorrect. But we could have a situation where important positions are given to the family members, and they might not be qualified for those positions or to hold that positions. So what would be the result then if we have got these sort of situation? What would be the result? What would be the impact? Lack of definition of roles and responsibilities. Obviously, I would not be asking too many questions from my son or daughter, from my brother, for that matter. And obviously, we also have to understand that within the family, many things have to be. I mean, within the family business, sorry, many things are to be kept secret and confidential. So obviously, the MIS system or information system would be comparatively would not be that transparent as we normally have in other businesses. So low level of transparency, and ultimately the result is weak risk management. So again, this discussion should not be taken in a negative manner. There's no right or wrong answer in it, and no one can actually deny the significance of family-owned businesses in the Indian economy. It is actually the family-owned businesses around the globe who are actually driving many economies around the globe. They've got a success stories. They've got a very strong footprint, And academically, there are a case studies in terms of if there is a good synchronization between the family and the business, the business can take off like the business can take off like anything. And there are also case studies where there were conflicts between both the family and the business, and this conflict actually led to the debacle of the business houses. So there are both the things available, both the stories available, etc., etc. Uh, so this is typical governance structure within the family. So it's bit complicated than the normal business. We have got a typical business team. Then there is an ownership structure. There are trusts that actually governs schema of thing, shareholders meeting, family office, and then the family system, which comprises of family constitution mainly, family council, and family member meetings. So this is basically, the purpose of a family-owned family business is not just about the purpose of the business. It is about the purpose of the family. So, both the family and the business, they go hand in hand together. So this is, the impact I was talking of about the family-owned business. This is a study conducted by an organization called I don't remember the name exactly, but uh, the web page is given from where I took this information. They conducted a survey of about 750 companies. The cumulative revenue was in dollar terms was 9.1 trillion, and the total staff of these 750 companies only around the globe. Okay. And I think the survey was done mainly of the European companies, I guess. They had 30.5 million staff. The survey pertained to the data of 2018, but it was released in 2020. And the earliest company that was included in those 750 top companies was established in the year 1366, and the latest company was established in the year 2000. So, this would actually give us some idea of how important the footprint is of family-owned business in driving the global economies. And the employee range of these companies range from 1,000 employees per company to as more as 200,000 employees per company. So this is on a lighter side, and maybe on the I don't know, negative side or positive side. This dad is showing to his daughter, someday all of this liability exposure will be yours. So she doesn't have a choice. If the business has assets, so she'll get the assets. If the business has liabilities, so she'll get the liabilities. And this definitely, I would say, it's on the negative side. I brought you up here today, son, because I wanted you to get a feel for the scope of this damn thing. So, I mean, again, that baby, he or she, whoever is hasn't got any choice. This, I would say, is on the positive side. One day this will be all yours, but right now I need you down in the warehouse, which means that boy or girl has to has to first learn and earn. Then only he will be, given the rights of to the assets and to the business, and he will be then, gain access or get access to the business council. So at the end of the day, this is the ideal scenario. This ideally the leader of the business or the elder of the family or the both. I mean, at the end of the day or at the end of his life, he should, he should be. I would say he would feel accomplished when he would be able to give this sort of statement. So God has blessed me with a wonderful family, a successful business, and outstanding employees. I do not take these blessings lightly. This is one of the survey result of one of the survey or poll that I conducted over recently. I conducted over LinkedIn. So the question is basically how much value does internal audit adds in overall business of an organization? Rate on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest. So this question actually I put on the LinkedIn and I got 236 votes, and 29% of the people voted less than 5, 43% of the people voted between 5 and 8, and only 28% of the people voted that internal audit provides more than 8 in term more than 8 or 9 or 10 value, basically they give 80 or 90 or 100% marks in terms of value addition done by the audit. The survey of this poll is basically very eye-catching, and the question was, should IT literacy be made mandatory for any one of the audit committee member of a listed company? So 96% of the people said yes, and only 4% of the people said no, and there were like 146 votes. And so, I mean, most of the people, or many of the people, or all of them almost, they think that now IT literacy should be made compulsory for a board member. So, I mean, if we look at the Code of Corporate Governance, the Code of Corporate Governance has actually laid down a certain competency level for audit committee member, which is like he should have good financial acumen. So, but the code, as to my knowledge, doesn't speak about IT literacy. So, I think this is something the stakeholders need to look into. So this is, I think I would say this is the key. Good family governance, basically it's driven by family communication. So I think I would say family communication is one of the key element. And this is something I would also want the panelists to highlight when we move to the next session. So let's move to the discussion now, and with the help of the participants and the panelists, I would try to uh, make the discussion as productive as possible. So at the end of the discussion, we have some key takeaways. Shehzad, how do I make the screen bigger?
Sorry, it is
How,
the
how do I make?
slideshow has
How do I make?
ended.
Sorry,
Slideshow has already ended. You have to stop share.
stop share. Okay. Stop share. I don't get this option. Okay,
See
I
on
don't
the
know why
top.
I'm not getting that
See on the
option.
top.
It says new share, and then
No, it's stop share. It's stop share.
Acha, okay, fair enough. Okay,
Yeah.
got it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so other two panelists, I'm sure they are also ready. Okay, thank you. Shehzad, has the Facebook issue been settled now?
Yeah, it's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so it's live. Okay, so let me. I mean, with the permission of all the panelists, let me start the discussion. And with all due respect, I'll be addressing all the panelists with their first name, just to keep this salutation away. So I hope it's okay with everyone. Okay, let's start the discussion with. And I'm sorry, Arif Saab was supposed to join us, but he couldn't join us. He had to go to Islamabad, and he was having certain meetings over there. And the flight schedule. He's coming back to Karachi, but the flight schedule actually clash with this webinar timing. So he has actually excused for this webinar. Uh, uh, Rizwan. Okay. Let me start the discussion by asking a question uh, from a layman perspective. How would you actually describe a family owned business? Or let me put it this way, if you were to sell the concept of family owned business, I mean, you were to advertise that family owned business is the only way moving forward, these are good, these are not bad. So how would you actually sell that concept?
So, description of a family-owned business. Normally, when we hear about that it's a family-owned business, like you very rightly pointed out, it's always perceived to be not only family-owned but also family managed. So, I mean, if you look around, you will see that even Walmart is a family-owned business, but managed, no. And there are other companies like Volkswagen or BMW which are family-owned, but definitely not managed, at least on an operational level, maybe on a strategic or a board level, yes. So family-owned businesses obviously are generally, when you talk about Pakistan, the thought that comes to the mind is that there's more than one generation of family members who are owning and operating a business and are involved in key operational as well as strategic as well as operational decisions. Strategic would mean that they can set the vision, that they know what they want to do, where they want to be, what they want to be, and then obviously they obviously have the ability and the willingness and the influence to achieve those goals also, right? So these are this is would be, I think, a layman when you say that, if you tell someone that I'm part of a family business, that's how that person would perceive a family owned business to be. um, Now your second question as to how or what strategy or how you would sell that family-owned businesses are the way forward. It's, first of all, mashallah, you made a very, very good presentation. That covered quite a few things. I really am a loss at what to say now, because your presentation covered most of the things I was probably going to say. But anyway, I'll try my best. So if you see, even in Korea, right, in all these big companies, they are family owned and in some cases managed. In India, you see Reliance, for example, owned and managed by a family. And previously it was the two brothers, and now the brother and his sons and the daughter, right? And if you see and you look all around, so family-owned businesses obviously have this distinct advantage where, if and again if they are not publicly listed, then they have this ability to take those decisions which other businesses may not be able to take very quickly, right? This is, I think, the speed at which they're able to make decisions or execute something would be probably at a faster pace than an organization which is, for example, a multinational or any other organization. So this is one of the key elements, speed. Then again, the distinction has to be made when I'm talking about family-owned businesses. Generally, it would not be a listed company. So, because there are some family-owned and managed businesses in Pakistan, which are also, as well as Reliance, for example, is a listed company. But then they can also look at the longer term rather than just focus on the short term. So generally, one would see that family-owned businesses are have been existing for a long time, much more than professionally managed businesses which are not owned by a particular family, because there's really one anchor which and whose name or whose reputation is associated. So some of the decisions and some of the strategic the strategic way forward is then determined by the family, keeping in view that their name is associated with that business. So, that would be my sort of selling point as to how a family-owned business would probably do a bit better than any other business.
Well said. I think you rightly mentioned about the speed of decision making, and I think the other important factor is the plus point is the red tapeism is actually is eliminated or cut off. So this is also something that I would, when I move to the other parties, other panelists, I would also want them to shed some light on it. Another question to you, Rizwan, on a similar lines. If let's say a youngster come to you, okay, and he is not part of your family, but he's part of some other family business group, and he's been given two choices. So he has to select out of the two choices, One is to go solo, and the other choice is to remain part of coming out of the US. So what would you actually advise him? And how would you, is there a generic sort of answer, or would it actually depend what sort of business groups he's come from, what sort of education he has gotten? So how would you handle that kind of situation or that kind of advice?
You see, just stepping a bit backwards. So first of all, I think this needs to be a collective decision between the family as well as the individual. Just saying that okay, the youngster has the the decision making whether to join the business or not. I would not completely sort of endorse delegation of decision making to a 21-year-old or a 22-year-old, and not because of any other reason. It's because at the end of the day, he's also part of the family, or she is also part of the family. So this is number one. Has to be a collective decision between the family and the individual or the youngster. But then again, the personality of that individual obviously will play a key role in determining whether that individual is the right fit within the family or not, as well as the aspirations and the vision of that individual, whether that sort of is in alignment with that of the family, right? So that is one thing. Another thing is that generally I would also advise that this process, if a person or a youngster has to or not to join the family, needs to be taken much earlier than once he's graduated or she's graduated from college. So I think that should be done when that individual is doing his or her O levels or A levels and inter. And moving from there, the individual would then, based on whether he's joining or not, select the college major as per the broad fields in which they'll be able to use the education practically. And then the family and that individual need to do a proper pro-conning, right? So what will he or she get out of joining the family business? What he or she will get out of going solo? And all of that needs to be sort of, uh, discussed in great detail. And I would also advise should also be documented, because the worst thing one can do is leave it to a youngster that okay, go ahead and fly solo, and then after 5 years that youngster comes around and blames you that okay, I was young, but you should have advised me that I should have joined. So it has to be collective decision. That's I would advise that youngster. So in short, I would advise that youngster that please take whatever decision you make, please make it collectively rather than doing it on your own.
Okay. Fair enough. Briefly, I would like to comment you on a very briefly, a 1 minute comment. If there's a conflict situation, you advise him to remain part of the family business, and that youngster or his dad or his mother, he or she wants him. Just brief 30-second or 60-second comment.
Sorry, I didn't get your question.
The question is,
disconnect.
The collective decision is that individual or youngster should remain part of the family business, right? But that youngster or his father or his mother, they want him to go solo. So there's a conflict. So how would you actually handle that conflict situation? Just a 30-second, 40-second answer.
Okay, very quickly, there is, even in our holy book, it's written, there's no compulsion in religion. So there's really no compulsion. So you see, the thing is that if a person is not motivated or is not does not want to join, the way to do is make that person join the family business, because that's the worst thing you can do.
Got your point.
At the end of the day, you need to enjoy your work, right?
Yeah, I think that's an ideal scenario. Obviously, if someone wants to make his own decisions within the family, so he should be allowed to do so. Fair enough. Moving towards Sadia, we talk a lot about leadership, coaching, mentoring, motivating, and taking out the best potential of any individual. So when you put all of these in terms of family-owned business, where let's say the leader of the business is also elder of the family. So what role he should be playing in terms of coaching the younger lot, not in terms of how they should be behaving on the dining table or in the family, but in terms of how they should be operating when it comes to serious business talks. So is first of all, is there any concept in the family owned business, and if there's a
Isn't there
concept,
should
how
be?
they...
Short answer is there should be. But before
Sorry,
answering
please go
that,
ahead.
let me just quickly tell you what perspective I bring, which is I've worked for my own family-owned business, but have also served on various boards of family-owned and managed businesses. So I've seen various levels of maturity of different types of family-owned businesses. And I think one thing that I've learned is well, the three ingredients you need for a successful family business are enlightened leadership, emotional intelligence, and exemplary governance. And if you have a combination of all three, and that's what makes you survive across generations. So I mean, enlightened leadership, and that's part of what you've just spoken about, that they should be in a position to mentor and provide guidance to the younger generation. They should have the vision, the foresight to be able to attract and retain not just the family members, but also other professionals within their companies. Emotional intelligence, because as you rightly pointed out in your presentation as well, what differentiates family businesses from any other is the emotive content that can be brought into decision making should you not get it right. And it's very important for the family elders to be able to anticipate and preempt disagreements, divergence of points of view, so that, I mean, they're able to anticipate what the emotional needs of the family are as well, apart from the business needs of the company. Thirdly, as I said, exemplary governance. And as you know, I'm a strong believer in that. It's very important for the leaders to set the standards, to be able to separate the responsibilities of every family member. And this is where also the main topic of your panel discussion today, the internal audit, to be able to show everybody, not just the family members, but also those professionals working in the company, that there are certain set of standards that they all operate by. They're not a group of haves, the family members, and the have-nots, the non-family members. It's not a state culture that permeates the culture of the organization, but professional conduct and policies and procedures. So the family and elders role is very much to be somebody who embodies these qualities and who is able to impart that not just around the dining table, but in a formal setting as well. You probably know that the latest trend in most family-owned businesses is actually to get professional coaches assigned to some of the younger generation who join the business. And these professional coaches act as somebody who you bounce ideas off, who you discuss certain relationships, so that you get a comfort level, that you get an independent point of view away from what defines the emotional level that is often part of a family relationship. And whether it's done by the family enter, whether it's done by independent coaches who come in from the outside, is an important role to be played to ensure that the wisdom that starts off a business imparts that to the next generation, so that the same principles and values can continue from generation to generation.
So would you recommend...
So one just
sorry.
last point of what you said, whether it's,
Okay.
you know, it often gets lonely on the top, and it's very important that as new family members join in, they don't feel that sense of isolation, because sometimes when you are a member of the family, not everybody ends up treating you as a colleague, because they do know that you're part of the ownership structure as well. So it's important both to have the support structure, both within the family, but also, as I mentioned, professional coaching that has now become the new norm in the most enlightened family businesses.
Okay, so what have you seen? I mean, locally and internationally. I mean, you've also worked abroad and you've studied abroad. So, I mean, should there be, I mean, in large business houses or in large family-owned businesses, should there be a very sort of very focused and very documented approach in terms of how they would be taken on board the induction plan for the family-owned business? Should it be documented and formalized plan, or rather than just middle of the
See, all these things depend very much on the size, the complexity, and the stage of maturity of the business. If it's a relatively new business and the visionary person who's set it up just wants to induct some of his family members to help him or her out, you can't have formalized rules from the beginning, because there has to be a certain level of flexibility, certain level of ability to move things around very quickly, as Rizwan also mentioned, that one of the key elements of family-owned businesses is the ability to be able to take decisions quickly. Now, as the family grows, a business grows in size and in complexity, and the more family members are supposed to join over time, which are not just the immediate nuclear family, but the extended family, then it's very important to have those policies and procedures laid down in terms of a family constitution, in terms of constituting a family council, to prevent the kind of disputes and disagreements that you alluded to earlier on. So yes, yes, important, but I would caveat that by saying it depends very much on the maturity stage of the company and the size and complexity.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. Moving to Shah Saab. Shah Saab. Shah Saab, are you there? Okay, let's.
You can move to another speaker.
Yes, can you hear me? Sorry, I think my internet connection is a bit. I think it's playing a bit. Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear. Yeah.
Do you want? Yeah, we can hear you. So maybe you can remain to switch off your camera. Shah Saab?
Yes, Junaid, go ahead with your question.
Okay, so I basically I said in the beginning I will be addressing with the first name. So Asad, your favorite topic, governance. So when we hear a lot about governance. We talk a lot about governance. So hearing and talking about governance is one thing.
So I think he's
governance is something.
He is disconnected.
Okay. So let's move to Rizwan then. Family constitution. Rizwan, how important is family constitution, first of all? So there are a couple of questions. First of all, what is a family constitution? Because most of the people actually don't know about family constitution. Question number one. Question number two, what role a family constitution actually plays in the growth of the business, in uniting the family and the business, and the success of the business? This is question number two. And question number three is how relevant family constitution would be going forward. So there are three questions within the umbrella of family constitution.
So family constitution, obviously, as any constitution of any country or any club or anything, is a set of rules which defines how things will be governed within the family, right? So constitution is a set of rules basically, and then a family constitution is a set of rules which defines how the family will function as a family, as well as when they are obviously in a business, it's in the family business, right? So that family constitution would, it's normally is a document which will say that, okay, who can join, when they will join, who is eligible to join, how, like you said, how will they start when they join, what will be, is there going to be a plan where that person or that individual is going to serve in certain positions for a certain period of time? then that document will also cover things like what if a conflict arises or there's a dispute resolution mechanism. It will also, sort of what Sadia pointed out, will have things on how, who will be the leader, who will decide what, how things will function. All of that is covered in the constitution, as in any constitution, right? So I can't overemphasize the need and the requirement of a written down document which says all of this. And most important is the exit. So if a family or a family member wants to exit, how and what will be the procedure for that? Because you will see that the number one reason for any family business to collapse is when one or more than one member wants to exit and there's really no defined procedure of exit. So that that sort of rules, that constitution will define and a lot more than what I've said, right? So this is basically a code of conduct. Your second question was what role the constitution can play in the success of a family business, right? So definitely, if there is, you see, when there's a family and then there's a business. So unless everything is clearly written down, there will be things which will come in the way, and those decisions will need to be taken. Unless there is something which one or more of the family members can refer to, disputes and hiccups will always be there. So this, I think, is not a guarantee of success, but definitely this is a minimum requirement that if you want to be successful, you need to have a constitution. So there might be exceptions to this rule, but definitely as a family business, you want to succeed, you need to have a proper written down constitution. So it plays a very key role in my opinion, right? Your third question was how relevant. So definitely it's nowadays even more relevant. This is the age of instant gratification. This is the age of, when at least when I was 15 or 20, there definitely there was no internet. The knowledge was very limited, and we were dependent on our elders, and we were dependent on people of experience to learn from them, right? So for example, if I wanted to learn on how to operate, let's say even in those times, when I remember when I was young and I used to go to my father's office to even operate a telex, I would need the telex operator, someone to teach me. So today that everything is available on YouTube and on the internet, right? So the young generation comes in definitely knowing more than at least people of my age, because they read up, they have the access to the internet just like we do, but definitely time is on their side. So things have times have changed. So it's and obviously because of that, and I would say erroneously, the younger generation might think that they are smarter than people who are in their mid 30s or mid 40s or mid 50s or their elders. And the constitution and makes it even it becomes even more relevant to have a constitution to make sure that everybody knows what their roles are and what the rules are.
Okay, thank you, Rizwan. I would like, okay, one more question, but a very brief comment or a short answer for that question. Let's say you mentioned, a constitution, family constitution is a set of rules. You may call it a Bible or whatever you want to name it. It has everything inside it. So let's say how a certain segment of the family would take an exit would be written or defined in the constitution. Let's say going by that constitution, I take an exit, okay, and amicably I take an exit. That's fine. It was my right. I took an exit. Fast forward 5 years down the road, two things could happen. I succeeded more than what I would have had I remained with the family, or it's the other way around. So, I mean, maybe I collapsed, maybe I grown like anything. So, obviously, when you would meet me and when I would meet you in family gatherings, so is there a friction or something? Would there be a friction?
You see, okay, so
Brief answer.
Brief answer. So if you see people who, when they meet in family gatherings, don't see eye to eye, are those where the exit was not defined, and there's always frustration because everybody thinks that they got the short end of the stick. So again, this is not a guarantee, but definitely if an exit is written down and defined, success or that's nasib, right? If you believe in that. But other than that, there should be no reason, because if everything was done as per the rules written down, then there should be really no reason for anybody not to see eye to eye with any, with each other. That's my short comment.
Okay, fair enough. Asad, are you there?
जी
अच्छा अच्छा आपका favorite topic, your favorite topic, governance, the topic that is close to your heart. Okay, we talk of governance, we hear of governance, we speak of governance. So, okay, that's fine. That is one thing. But when it comes to practicing, so that is a real test of governance. So my question is governance being practiced in real, or it is just one of those things that we call window dressing?
Well, I don't know in which context you are saying.
In family-owned businesses.
Yeah, in family-owned enterprises, obviously, the governance, as we define in the Code of Corporate Governance or in the guidelines and international best practices, obviously, is too ideal, and I don't think it is followed like that. And that is actually one of the weakness of family-owned and family-managed enterprises. Just to give you a bit of background, I think earlier we have had very rich discussion. You have already, I think, Rizwan and Sadia and yourself have covered very thoroughly the family-owned enterprises. I just want to say that, you see, most of the businesses worldwide in terms of number is family-owned enterprises. So it's a reality. And good governance in a family-owned enterprises will actually ensure its success and its sustainability. The problem with the family-owned enterprises is, we talked about the advantages. The advantages that they are agile, they're flexible, quick decision-making, more entrepreneurial, so relatively compared to many of the bureaucracies like multinationals that we have, they have prompt decision-making. But then the problem that you earlier discussed, I think the family harmony itself, the communication that you talked about, that may be lacking. And because, usually the systems and processes and the constitution itself is not properly defined, and, it's largely informal way of management. So, that actually causes friction also sometimes, and misgivings. And obviously, the biggest risk in a family enterprise is a family-run business is, its sustainability and the conflicts that arise. So what I say is that actually, if in a non-family-owned enterprise where there is professional management, they should adopt some of the attributes of family enterprises for success, like more informality for better communication and interaction. And family enterprises should actually formalize more, to ensure that they do not break up, there are less conflicts, there is better communication, and, for their sustained success. So the answer actually lies something in between. One other major problem with the family enterprises, I think in today's world, is really, because mostly the family enterprises start obviously from an entrepreneur, then it becomes a family business. But then in a family business, usually especially in cultural environments in India, Pakistan, in our settings, the elders, are the people who call the shots. So, and youngsters are generally, supposed to follow the orders. Now that kills the innovation, because innovation generally occurs with young people, and innovation is always, because, there is never, if you're just in the culture of following orders and following, what your father tells you, what your grandfather tells you, and then obviously you become a follower. The thinking and creativity comes with discussion and debate when you actually encourage communication and empower the younger people. So what I have seen is that those cultures where there is a culture of rebellion, where there's a culture of empowerment, there is greater degree of innovation. And I think that is one reason why when we talk about innovation, unfortunately, Pakistan, we are number 107 in innovation, being the 5th largest country. And I think one reason is because we have a controlled environment. When you talk about our businesses also, we have all controlled businesses, you see, either controlled by the public sector, where the government controls, or it's the family and the state controlled, So in the family businesses, if they empower their young people, and if they adopt the systems, then I think the sustainability and family harmony will also be addressed, and the innovation will also start. And I just want to end my this response to you with a very interesting quote from Oscar Wilde. Way back in 19th century, he said, "Old believe everything, middle-aged suspect everything, and young know everything." So, earlier Rizwan was talking about, the younger people. So he also said that now young know every. I think it has always been that. The younger people are the people who come up with new ideas and who innovate, who are creative, provided they are empowered and they are challenged and they are allowed to play the role.
Actually, Rizwan was talking about himself because he's also young. Shah Sahab, sorry, Asad, one more question regarding the one question related to your question, actually, your answer, actually. So which means, bringing in more professionals in family-owned enterprises, as I understand, would add more value to the organization as a whole, because then the owners would or can focus more towards innovation. They can look into the more finer aspects of the business, and I would not call it donkey work, but the other professional legs would then be taken care of by professionals. So would you support that argument, or how do you see that argument?
Absolutely. I think you also raised this point earlier. And this is also one of the limitations in the family businesses. Obviously, there is a tendency that the father would like his sons to come immediately join as directors, or as decision makers, without actually putting them at the positions where they also do the learning. So the victim is meritocracy. So when there is, I think on the family basis, if you just induct them at positions that they're not capable of delivering, then in that case, obviously, it actually harms the family's interest. and the business objectives. So obviously, I think for sustained success of a family-owned business, there has to be some kind of meritocracy and a combination of family as well as the professionals, and actually then the organization or the group itself becomes a family. So when you're working together, the professional people who are experts and the members of the family have to blend somehow. Obviously, it is never an ideal situation. There has to be some give and take, but the aim should be to do a blend, a combination of professionals, experts, and of course the family talent. And then the family talent is promoted on the merit also. I know it's easier said than done, but that is what should be the aim.
I think that's a very important point that you highlighted, that the family business shouldn't look like a family itself. So I mean, there should be a blend. So it doesn't look. I mean, you see the same faces when you go home. You see the same faces when you go to the work. So so the
So when
breakfast
we are
I did with the
talking
same.
about, actually, it's the group organization, which becomes a family. So there are some people connected through blood, and some people connected through the same stakes. So if Novatex is a family business, it's Diwans and the professionals, they all become a family, because they're all working for the same interest. So actually, the humans have advanced over centuries. It is because of their collaboration. It's a very interesting, again, thing that Stephen Hawking said. He said that for millions of years, humans lived like animals. There was no difference between animals and humans. Then something happened. They started talking. And when they started talking and communicating with each other, they started, exchanging ideas and thinking. And then they started collaboration. So ultimately, communication, thinking, ideas, and collaboration, they took over the planet and they conquered everything. So this is the history of the humankind, and this is the same, for if you want any nation to succeed, any family to succeed, any organization to succeed, it has to be collaboration, it has to be empowerment, it has to be meritocracy, and of course communication. So these are the same basic principles which apply in any organization.
Fair enough. I think something very interesting I would like to share while I was preparing for this webinar. So I read it somewhere that family-owned businesses were compared with the likes of Italian mafias. I mean, it's obviously it's on a negative side. I mean, and the reason or rationale was that in Italian mafias, there is no option but to join the family business, and at a very young age. So this also happens in our local scenario as well. And just to add, I mean, this is my side of the story, that this also happens in the political scenario in Pakistan. So I mean, political scenario on one side, business, family owned business on one side, and Italian mafia on the other side. Okay, let me go back to Rizwan on a lighter side. And this is a compulsory answer. This is a compulsory question that you have to take. How do you keep the home ministry aloof of what's going on in the business? Let me repeat the question. How do you keep aloof the home ministry? I think deliberately you are trying to avoid the question. How, how do you keep the home ministry aloof of what's going on in the business? I mean, you are making big money in the business. So how do you keep, I mean, the home ministry aloof of all of this, what's going on in the business? Quick answer on the lighter side. So what are the tricks actually? You want to know what are the tricks?
So I would think I'm keeping, yeah. So I may think that I'm keeping them aloof, but it's the age of information. Everything floats around everywhere. And trust me, Now with the children knowing everything, it's not possible. So that,
Okay.
if
So
nothing
there are
else,
no
then the
tricks
children would
involved.
ask me.
It's a very diplomatic answer, you know, very tactfully he got away. Because I think he knows his wife is
I've
watching.
learned from you. I've learned from you, Shasa. So
You're not going to share your trade secrets, are you?
Sadia, would you like to add anything?
By home ministry, are you referring to spouses?
Yeah.
Well, then let me pitch in and say that you're losing out by not involving them, because cognitive time is what's important in decision making. And sometimes, and I'm speaking now for gender diversity as well, which can come in all shapes and sizes. So don't keep them aloof, is what I would say. And in fact, some of the most enlightened family businesses that I've interacted with have had training sessions dedicated just for the female members of the business, and who don't want to be part of the business, but they have training sessions for the family members, the wives, the daughters-in-laws, the daughters who are not involved, just so that they are aware of what the issues are. So the knowledge and awareness is there, even if they don't want to have a very proactive role in the business. And it's very important for them to have that awareness and that knowledge, because this also minimizes family disruptions, which are beyond the business.
Fair enough. Okay. Now, last round of questions, and two questions. I mean, these would be repeat questions from all three of you, and I want a very brief answer because we have to move to we have to take questions from the audience as well. So the two questions starting from Sadia, then moving towards Rizwan, and then finally to Shah Sahab, Asad. The question is how independence of an chief internal auditor can be managed in a family or enterprise? Because if I am the chief internal auditor, how would I actually escalate and point out the mistakes made by, let's say, Rizwan's son, for example? I'm just taking this as an example, okay? And another question is Sadia, um, when making the risk management matrix, okay? So how important family relationship would be in the overall risk matrix? Would it actually come into the risk matrix, or would it not come into the risk matrix? And how would you actually refine the risk? Sorry, because as I believe, if something bad happens in the family, it could actually sink the business as well. So these two questions, a 1 minute answer.
Thank you, Junaid. I'll try and speak very fast. So on the first answer, taking again the cue that it's Rizwan who's involved, the cue has to come from Rizwan himself to his chief internal auditor to give him the comfort and the empowerment that he is there to do his work, and that there will be no impediments in the conduct of his professional work, whether it's in reporting against any other family member for not following the rules and procedures. If Rizwan himself doesn't have that attitude towards the internal audit function, then it's going to flounder. That's a simple answer. Many businesses, I mean, when it's listed, it's clear. I mean, there's set rules. Independent directors head the audit function. There's a dotted reporting line to the chairman, who may be independent as well, chairperson, excuse me. So those are the things. And in a private setup, things may be different. But again, as I said, enlightened leadership and exemplary governance is what I keep going back to. And the tone has to be set from the top. If they want proper checks and balances and everybody to feel empowered, then they have to give that cue to their chief internal auditor that they're there for a purpose and they should serve that purpose. On your second question on risk management, absolutely. I mean, setting up a family council or having a family constitution drafted is a risk mitigant. Let's face it. It's because we have recognized after sort of centuries of observing family businesses that disputes arise. And it is for that reason that we have come up with these ideas. It's a risk mitigant measure. And if you define these as part of your risk matrices, you want to follow these even more. So yes, risk management is extremely important. And along with everything else that has to be factored in, the possibilities of the kind of disputes that may arise should also be openly discussed, and so that the requisite documentation is done with that in view.
Thank you, Rizwan.
Yeah, so at the risk of repeating what Sadia just mentioned, that the owners may be holding key positions, but if as long as that owner realizes that internal audit per se is good for the business, that means it's good for the owner also, right? So you're right. There might be instances where there would be certain reportings which would sort of reflect on some of the decisions or some of the controls which are existing. But then it's a mindset. If you encourage that, okay, whatever it is I want to improve, let me know, then that sort of ensure the independence of that internal auditor, right? With regard to risk management, definitely there has to be, all businesses are operating between the bookends of risk and reward, right? So identification of the risk is the key thing. Family conflict or family dysfunction is a key risk. You need to, but again, risk identification and management has to be a collaborative measure. It can't be where just the owner is thinking. So you have to get everybody together. You have to identify the risks and the mitigants, rather than just the owner doing it or any one individual doing it. It has to be a collaborative from the plant manager to your sales guy to your purchase guy to everybody. So everybody has to pitch in this whole effort.
Okay, thank you. Shah Sahab, brief answer.
I think you already had two very comprehensive answers. As I said earlier, I think the principle is the same. In fact, for a robust family business, there has to be a constitution and there should be a family council in case if the business is not a company or not a listed company. But it's easier said than done. Ideally, what I would advise family enterprises, especially those who become big, is actually they should, earlier you said, or somebody said that usually family businesses are not listed. That is not the case. Actually, when the family businesses need capital or they become big, you see most of the family businesses and successful family businesses have now organized themselves into listed companies. I mean, whether you look at Lucky Group or Angro Group or Manshar or Arif Habib Saab, look at any. All of them have become listed. So the advantage is when you organize yourself into a listed, you also have an independent element, you have some discipline, and then you effectively work with certain principles and governance standards. And in that case, obviously, you are able to take full benefit of the professionals. And your ability to manage the issues within the family also are better managed. So overall risk management is better, and obviously irrespective of whether you are listed or not listed, it is really in the interest of the family if they empower the independent the internal auditor and ensure the audit functions independence for their own interest, because they will have the benefit of getting insights from an independent function. But ideally, as I said, my strong advice to the family enterprises, family businesses is that there is a great benefit of after a certain period of time when you achieve certain success to list yourself, become a listed company. That will enhance transparency. It will be in the benefit and interest of the family. You'll be able to not only raise capital, but besides so many other advantages the transparency and sustainability of the business improves. That doesn't mean that when you get listed, that the family control is not there. Family will still have significant control, but then you also get independent advice and independent element, and it becomes more systematic and more transparent and better communication.
Thank you, Shahzad. Sadia, a quick question to you from the audience. Let me read it out. You are CFO at a family-owned business. You come across excess personal drawings or expenses of son of the CEO. What is the most appropriate way to address the issue? I think this is, dil ki awaaz.
I think it's pursuant to what I said earlier on. You have to bring it to the notice. I mean, first confront the person himself, and if not, escalate it. And if you don't do it, you're just hanging on to your job, which may be a reason for you not to bring it, but that's not doing your job.
Okay. The other question is to Rizwan. Why a family, I mean, he's asking why a family business owner would actually delegate his powers to the professional managers? Why not to his son or daughter? Why? He's saying, why would he actually transfer it?
Yeah, because, it depends on the vision of that owner, right? So if you put the right people for the right job, then you have to delegate to that person, right? So if you want to grow, fine. If you have family members, they can be there on a strategic level or be on a strategic decision making. And if they are good at something, fine. They can be in an operational role also, right?
So it's basically
having said that, a professional is doing a better job. It's the right person for the right job, right? So it's
so basically So it really depends on the vision of the organization, right? Vision of the owners. If they want to grow, obviously they need to delegate few powers, as Asad also mentioned, you and Sadia also mentioned. Okay, fair enough. The question is, I think the question has come from India actually, surprisingly. How to promote internal audit and governance in family-owned businesses? How to promote internal audit and governance in family-owned businesses? Any volunteers? I mean, maybe I think this is one of the questions that need to be addressed about the code of corporate governance.
As I said, I think there is a need to do more advocacy of this concept. I already explained, Junaid, that a family-owned enterprise, if it wants to succeed and achieve its objectives, it has to run as if it is and organized as if it is a listed company, really, with that kind of mindset. They have to move towards that. That will ensure its success and achievement of objectives. And of course, for that, they need experts, they need independent auditors, they need independent expert CFO, they need expert technical people, and then of course they will have family members in the board positions and other strategic positions. So it has to be a combination. But if they restrict everything to themselves and not engage professionals, and they will be sacrificing meritocracy. So any organization that doesn't function on merit, whether it is a private organization, government organization, its sustainability and its ability to achieve its objectives will be undermined. So they have to do it in their own interest.
And Sadia, there's a question which I would want you to answer actually. The question is, relating to the code of corporate governance. So the question is basically, would you recommend, keeping in view the peculiar governance requirements of the family-owned businesses that we discussed earlier, would you recommend any change in the code of corporate governance that would actually specifically address those peculiar governance requirements of the family-owned enterprises?
Junaid, that's a good
Because,
question.
yeah,
But,
yeah.
we always have to tread a very fine line between regulation and over-regulation. There's already guidelines for family-owned businesses that was issued, and I think a number of you were on that particular task force. That was done in, I think, 2008, 2009 with SECP and PICG, publishing the guidelines for family-owned businesses. So those guidelines are already published, and those are actually very good guidelines. Whether we want to convert them into codes or have certain aspects of those inside a code for listed companies, I don't personally think there's a need for that. We do have a comprehensive code, and as Asad mentioned, all the forward-looking companies would want to try and aspire to most of the governance standards that are prescribed for listed companies. Now, as far as, I mean, and just going back to what Asad just answered as well, why do you encourage, or how do you encourage corporate governance and internal audit? This is really the business case for corporate governance. And this is where I think the role of academia and the role of research institutes have to come in, and coming up with the adequate research which is local, which is pertinent to our companies, which is localized, with quoting examples from those who have succeeded within our family-owned businesses, and there are many of those. So business case studies, empirical research, data, that's the focus of the Commission as well now. We're focusing more on trying to elaborate on the business case and get the data and the research going so that people are themselves convinced of the merit of following a certain path rather than us trying to do it by diktats. So that's, I guess, the new way to look at it.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. There's a question that has come from the audience. I would like Rizwan first and then Asad to briefly comment on this. And the question is basically, I mean, from aspiring chief internal auditors. Okay, and they say, I mean, whether if they have a choice, whether to join as chief internal auditor in a local family-owned business environment. So, what exactly they should be keeping in mind, A? And the other thing is basically, that they are very confused in a sense. I mean, the reporting structure might not be that clear in a family or enterprise. The structure would be very clear. I'm in MNC, like functionally you report to the board audit committee, administratively you report to the CEO and the management. So because everyone or many of the owners are actively involved, so there could be, I mean, conflicts in terms of, I mean, whom you should be reporting to. Or maybe there's a question in line that board audit committee would not be that functional or would not be that independent. So if board audit committee in a family owned enterprise is not that independent, so how would the chief internal auditor or the audit department would become independent? So a couple of questions merged together.
So as in any job interview, I mean, I would expect that gentleman or that lady, whoever, to ask, what their expectations are and would be reporting to. Obviously, if the answer is that the owner is saying you will report to my son, then obviously that gentleman or that lady has to take the decision accordingly whether they want to do the job or not, right? So. So yeah, I mean, having said that, there are family-owned companies which are around and which have an internal audit function, and there are chief internal auditors in those companies, and they seem to be doing a reasonably good job. So it's not all as bad as it looks. Frankly speaking, at the end of the day, when there is an active owner involved, the way he is worried about his money going anywhere is probably, I'm not saying in a negative way, but in a professional company, it's, they're just professional, right? And the management is different and the owners are different. Here, the owner is actively involved. Trust me, he will be riding on the internal auditor's case to find him any loopholes or anything which are not going as per the protocol which that owner has set. So at the end of the day, there are certain internal audit guidelines, but mostly it is whatever the processes are whatever the rules are, whether they are being followed or not, right? And if there is any pilferage or any other thing that needs to be highlighted. So yeah, and again, it depends on that individual also. At the end of the day, that individual should know more about internal audit than the owner, and has to guide the owner accordingly also, if that owner is not very well enlightened, I would think.
Asad, your take on this?
Yeah, I think Rizwan has very rightly covered it in the right manner. The individual has to take the judgment, do the judgment, and also I think it's not necessarily that all the family-owned businesses are similar. I have seen even multinationals more narrowly focused. Sometimes, in many cases, multinationals are totally governed from outside, So even the board members are really there just to endorse whatever policy decisions are taken outside. So it really depends. They can be a family-owned listed company, and there are many in Pakistan, where you will have an environment where the auditor will find more independence than sometimes even the multinational company. So it really depends on the company and the culture. But obviously, as I said, the aim should be, and there can be a huge opportunity for professionals to actually, that should be the role of the professionals, to do advocacy and lead the family-owned enterprises to better governance. And earlier you asked a question about the regulation, whether code of corporate governance. I would like to comment on that also, should have any provision for family-owned, etc. I think Sadia was absolutely right. Look, I mean, governance can only be regulated in a very limited sense, only very broad and key things. Ultimately, good governance happens when the market promotes it, when the society promotes it, when the investor promotes it. So we need to build an ecosystem whereby our entities are better governed, they adopt good governance practices in their own interests. You see, the most important point that we all need to recognize is that good governance systems will result in better profits, better bottom line. You need good governance, not for the sake of regulator. You need good governance for your own sustainability, for your own wealth creation and value creation on a sustained basis.
Fair enough. I think it's a very valid point, and I think you have been raising this point at various forums as well. One last final question with Sadia, and then we wrap it up. There's a general complaint by the chief internal auditors, and that complaint is when the business has to choose between the business and the compliances. So obviously they choose the business. The business comes first, and the controls weaknesses or the limitations of controls or the improvement areas, they go to the back burners due to one reason or the other. So I mean, is this just a myth, a perception, or is this a reality? As a business person, how would you actually address this thing?
It depends on how you're defining what is good for the business. It may be fine for the short term that you're saving a few costs by not implementing the right processes and the compliance mechanisms. But in the long term, the business is going to suffer if you don't have the right processes in place. So you have to understand whether you're looking at the business in the short-term perspective or long-term perspective. I don't think there's a conflict in it. If you're really looking at it in the long-term perspective, business will suffer if you don't have the right compliance mechanisms in place.
Okay, thank you. Rizwan, would you like to add anything?
I can't agree with Sadia more. I mean, it's a short-term approach, fine. Otherwise, in the longer run, the processes, the compliances need to be there for the business to prosper in the longer run. So,
Fair enough. Fair enough. Thank you. Shehzad, shall we sum up?
मेरा
I would like to comment on this.
Okay, please.
And I'm going to give you a different answer. You know, as somebody said, I think that if I had, worked according to the rules, something like that, somebody's very successful, I would not have achieved what I have. You know, and as sometimes it is said, rules are made to be broken also. The point is, what compliance are we talking about? Fundamental issues of ethics and significant matters, obviously, compliance is very important. Compliance has to be, there has to be a culture of compliance. But sir, if there are certain ridiculous type of laws or they can be, you know, you have to see, obviously a businessman will see what is the cost of compliance, you know, what is the penalty if I don't comply, and ultimately what is my sustained objective. So he has to look at long term. I agree with that. But, you know, it's not that, you know, practical that you go for compliance no matter how stupid the rules are. Sometimes, you know, you need adjustment in rules, and there has to be a compromise. So compliance is very important, but then business objectives are also important. There's no clear-cut answer to this, but, you know, many businesses take conscious decisions of certain non-compliances, even at the cost of taking some penalties also, because they think that the, you know, compliance doesn't make sense, doesn't make business sense.
So, Asad, let me caveat that I think educated on the assumption that rules make sense. If they don't, the regulators care to listen to the business world.
Yeah, unfortunately, Sadia, what I have seen is that regulators are always behind the businesses. You know, they lag, and you know, the same problem with the governments also. We still have 19th century rules, laws. You know, that is why our governments do not function also. So if our rules keep pace with the times, then I think these issues will be less. But then, you know, in real life, there are always issues. There are always compromises. There is no hard and fast answer and clear-cut answer sometimes.
Thank you. Rizwan, would you like to make a comment? Re-comment?
I have already made the comment that, and again,
Okay.
you know, the question needs to be on what exactly compliance you're not adhering to, right? So if for example, some business owner thinks that, okay, the delivery challan does not need to be made and the invoice doesn't need to be made, just delivered to the customer because he's wanting the delivery right now, maybe that's a short-term solution, but if he keeps on doing it, then there's chance of pilferage, right? So again, what are we talking about is very important, right? So
I give you another example. You know, company law, for instance, used to require that you have to have the provident funds separate in a separate bank account, right? So sometimes, you know, these are in many companies, you know, they're you don't sometimes comply with that, but the funds may be there. But
Okay, let me then, I think there's some connectivity issue. Shehzad, let me sum up the discussion, what we have had so far. So then I'll hand over the mic
kept
to
in
you
a
then.
separate bank account, and used to be a
Okay.
I think I gave you the answer. Sorry.
Okay, fair enough. Okay. No, it's okay. It's okay, sir. Thank you very much, all of you. So let's sum up the discussion we had so far. So I've jotted down a few points. So I'll read it out for the benefit of everyone. So there are like 4-5 points. First of all, the family-owned businesses is a global phenomena. So I mean, they are really impact makers. So they drive the economies. So they have been, they always have been there. They are here to stay. So there are many success stories. There are more success stories than failures. So family-owned businesses, if the answer is are they good or bad, so I would say they are good. So good for everyone, not only for the family but also for the employees and also for the economy at large. Is governance important? Yes, governance is important. It's equally important for family-owned businesses, whether they are listed or not. The question is, has family-owned businesses got some peculiar governance requirements? Yes, they've got some peculiar governance requirements which needs to be addressed, which needs to be taken care of, which needs to be appreciated, which needs to be addressed. And I think regulator also need to have a relook at the code of corporate governance in terms of coming up with certain innovative solutions in addressing those peculiar issues, maybe a separate code or guidelines, or I don't know. Internal audit and risk management adds value to the overall governance structure. Yes, it adds value. Um, Communication with the family members and the constitution plays an important role in bringing together, in harmonizing the family and the business. So these 3 or 4 or 5 things I would say are the key takeaways, and couple of more things that also came out of the discussion was I think शायद असद ने ये बात कही थी कि कोड में कुछ चीज़ें हैं और फैमिली ओन एंटरप्राइजेस की कुछ चीज़ें हैं, तो आई थिंक बोथ हैज़ टू टेक थिंग्स फ्रॉम ईच अदर. सो आई मीन जिस तरह क्विक डिसीजन मेकिंग है, स्पीड डिसीजन मेकिंग है, रेड टेपिज्म को कट करती है फैमिली ओन बिजनेस, तो दैट इज समथिंग दैट अदर बिजनेसेस और एमएनसी आल्सो नीड टू अडॉप्ट. Similarly, there are good things or good practices being followed by MNCs in terms of compliances, in terms of procedures, policies, and in terms of hierarchy and etc. etc. So that needs also to be taken by the family-owned enterprises to a limit that it doesn't slows down the business pace. So this I would say is the takeaway of today's session. So over to you, Shehzad, and thank you very much to all of you once again, to the panelists, to the participants, to the CFO Club, to the MPF, and especially I would like to mention or take 2 names. The people behind the curtains, I would say, Rabia of MPF, General Secretary, and Zain, the Office Secretary of MPF. So they too actually, both of them did a very good job in collaborating and everything, making arrangements. So over to you, Shehzad.
Thank you very much. Excellent session, thought-provoking panel discussion. मेरा एक comment है, इसको comment कह लें, suggestion कह लें, caution कह लें. देखिए, हमने बात जब start की थी industry academia की, so we highlighted there is a huge gap between academia and industry. Likewise, there is a huge gap. Regulator अपनी दुनिया में है. I'm so sorry अगर किसी को बुरा लग रहा हो, और industry अपनी दुनिया में है. हमारा काम है कि हम दोनों को साथ बिठाएं. जैसे हमने इंडस्ट्री और एकेडमिया को कई जगह पे साथ बिठाया और इस पर रिसर्च भी हो रही है. सो वी आर आल्सो हैव अ रिसर्च टॉपिक ऑन ऑडिट एंड गवर्नेंस, एंड वी आर डूइंग दैट रिसर्च विद कैस्पिट यूनिवर्सिटी. सो पहली ये ख्वाहिश है, और असद अली शाह साहब का भी सपोर्ट है, वी शुड हैव अ जॉइंट फोरम जहां रेगुलेटर, चाहे वो स्टेट बैंक हो, SECP हो, और बहुत सारे रेगुलेटर्स हैं, वो सारे FBR है, एंड देन द इंडस्ट्री शुड सिट टुगेदर. और हमें फ्यूचर की डायरेक्शन अपनी क्लियर करनी है. इस डिजिटल दौर में, टेक्नोलॉजी के दौर में, रेगुलेशंस आप तेजी से लाते जाएंगे और इंडस्ट्री वो सिर्फ कंप्लायंसेस में ही लगी रहेगी, तो बिजनेस का क्या होगा? दूसरी तरफ वो बिजनेस होंगे जो सिर्फ बिजनेस को फोकस करेंगे, वो लिस्टेड नहीं करवाएंगे अपने आप को. कल मैं एक कंपनी के ऑनर से मिला, दे सेड कि हम ना लिस्टेड हैं, ना लिस्टेड करवाएंगे, लेकिन उनके पर्टिकुलर बिजनेस प्लान्स हैं. सो क्यों नहीं लोग लिस्टेड करवाते, या क्यों एडवांटेज नहीं उठाते, फॉर एग्जांपल टैक्सेस के? सो हम चूंकि हम तो प्रोफेशनल है, हमारा काम है दोनों को एक साथ बिठाएं, रेगुलेटर्स को भी लाएं और बिजनेसेस को भी लाएं, ऑनर्स को भी लाएं, प्रोफेशनल्स को भी लाएं. प्रोफेशनल्स की जो शिकायत अभी एक मैसेज से क्लियर हो रही थी क्वेश्चन में, वो ये था कि सेट ओरिएंटेड में जाऊं, मैं क्या देखूं। तो भाई सेट ओरिएंटेड में जो आपका इशू है वो शायद छोटे सेट के साथ है। बड़े सेट के साथ आप आईसीए में जाते हैं, एंग्रो में जाते हैं, आपको कोई इशू नहीं होता, वो भी सेट बेस्ड कंपनीज है। तो बेसिकली इशू सेट बेस्ड कंपनी से नहीं है, उसको शायद वो छोटे ग्रुप से उसको इशू है, बड़े ग्रुप से वो इशू खत्म हो जाता है। सो माय पॉइंट इज वी शुड बिल्ड अ कम्युनिटी, एक ऑडिट एंड गवर्नेंस का एक मजबूत एक बनाते हैं काउंसिल। लेट्स सिट टुगेदर एंड वर्क टुगेदर फॉर द बेटरमेंट ऑफ पाकिस्तान। सो विद दिस कमेंट, अगर इस पे आपका कोई जवाब है तो लेट मी नो। एंड थैंक यू एवरीवन, थैंक यू सादिया, थैंक यू रिजवान दीवान साहब, थैंक यू असद अली शाह साहब, एंड थैंक यू एमपीएफ। Junaid, you were wonderful today. Thank you.
Thank you.